Okay, we're going to start in about half a minute. So before we start, just want to make my standard announcements that every morning at 4:30 in the morning we have Mangal Arti. And then after that, tomorrow morning, because Thursday morning, we have class at 6:30 in the morning, about 7:15. And then we have Greeting the Deities right afterwards. And then tomorrow night, of course, we'll have the same sort of Bhagavad Gita class every night at 6 o'clock East Coast U.S. time, which is 10 o'clock in the morning, uh, New Zealand time, 8 o'clock Australia time, middle of the night, or middle of the morning in India time, and you can all figure that out. So that'll be, but the morning class at 6:30 in the morning is only on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Everywhere it's Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Whether you're in New Zealand, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in India or in the United States, because it's early in the morning United States time, so which makes it the same day basically all over the world. Okay? So we're going to chant Jai Radhamadava, and then hopefully more people will join us. We got 7 people. Usually people join us through the evening. Jaya Radhamadava Kunja Bihari Jai Radhamadava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balaba Iri Badadhati Gopi Jana Balaba Iri Badadhati Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radhamadhava Kunya Bihari Jai Radhamadhava Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Malaba Kirivardhati Gopi Jana Malaba Kirivardhati Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radhamadhava Kunya Bihari Jai Radhamadhava Kunya Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravatakacharya all Stutara Sitashi Shimad His Divine Grace Savaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrind Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadad Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrind Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopika Sayam Kun Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuram Ki Jai Jagadasami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Gajai Samaveda Bhakta Vrind Gajai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Gaur All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so we're going to continue our reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, beginning with the 40th text in the second chapter. And as I said before, we're going through really slowly, reading all the verses, the word-by-word synonyms, and the texts, and Prabhupada's purports, and explaining what needs to be explained. So, Om Ganat Timidandasha Gananjana Shalakaya Jakshur Unmeditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, text 40 in the second chapter, and now we're getting into a sort of a different mood in Krishna's preaching to Arjuna. As we know, previously Krishna preached to Arjuna in this chapter that you're not the body, the soul is eternal, and he repeated it many, many times in many different ways. Then Krishna started to preach to Arjuna about how if he didn't fight, he'd be a coward, Lagavan, he'd be like very light, and everybody would make fun of him. And now Krishna is going to talk about another topic in text 40. So let's start. So text 40, Neha Bikramana Shosti Prachavayana Vijite Swapalpamapyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bayat. Very, very important verse. Because this is a very reassuring verse. This verse reassures us. Na, there is not iha in this yoga avikrama, in endeavoring. Nashaha, loss. Asti, there is pratyavayaha, diminution. Na, never. Vijate, there is. Su, open, a little. Api, although. Asha, of this, dharmasya, occupation, trayate, releases, mahata, from very great boyat, danger. So translation, in this endeavor there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So Prabhupada explains in his ecstatic purport that activity in Krishna consciousness, or acting for the benefit of Krishna, without expectation of sense gratification, is the highest transcendental quality of work. Even a small beginning of such activity finds no impediment, nor can that small beginning be lost at any stage. Any work begun on the material plane has to be completed, otherwise the whole attempt becomes a failure. But any work begun in Krishna consciousness has a permanent effect, even though not finished. The performer of such work is therefore not at a loss, even if his work in Krishna consciousness is incomplete. 1% done in Krishna consciousness bears permanent results, so that the next beginning is from the point of 2%. Whereas a material activity without 100% success, there is no profit. Ajamil performed his duty in some percentage of Krishna consciousness, but the result he enjoyed at the end was 100% by the grace of the Lord. There's a nice verse in this connection in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto, 5th chapter, text 15. Chotva sadharmam charanam bhujam harer bhajan vaktvo patiktato yadi yatratakva vavadramma bhudam shikim kovarta hapto bhajatam sudharmataha. If someone gives up his occupational duties and works in Krishna consciousness and then falls down on account of not completing his work, what loss is there on his part? And what can one gain if one performs his material activities perfectly? Or as the Christians say, what profiteth a man if he gain the whole world, yet suffers the loss of his eternal soul? Material activities and their results end with the body, but work in Krishna consciousness carries a person again to Krishna consciousness even after loss of the body. At least one is sure to have a chance in the next life of being born again as a human being, either in the family of a great cultured Brahmin or in a rich aristocratic family that will give one a further chance for elevation. That is the unique quality of work done in Krishna consciousness. I think I need to explain that. In other words, as Bhagavatam says, better a moment of Krishna consciousness than a whole life without Krishna consciousness, because a whole life without Krishna consciousness is equivalent to the life of a tree that lives for thousands of years. What is the use of a long life like a tree? And also the example is given of a bellows. Now, some of you may not know what a bellows is. A bellows is the thing that makes air, air pump, basically, old style air pump, that the people used to make horseshoes and put them on horses, would use to heat up the metal. So the metal would become red hot, so they go. So the bellow is breathing. But what's the use of the breathing of the bellows? What's the use of a long life like a tree? What's the use of being a beast, eating, sleeping, discharging semen? This is Bhagavatam. It's not my words. Better one moment of Krishna consciousness, because basically, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. In other words, you lose everything. Like Prabhupada, I was listening the other day, Prabhupada was talking about how people endeavored to make this big, big skyscraper. Like there's this skyscraper, or mini skyscraper in New York, that's called blank, blank, blank tower. I'm not going to give you the name of it, because I think some of you can guess. And so it says the person's name, tower. So the person will die one day. And if the person has not done devotional service, then the person may take birth as a rat in the same tower. But whatever he has accomplished, or she, I'm not going to give you a hint who it is, whatever he or she has accomplished in this lifetime, finished. As they say, you can't take it with you. And another example I often use in this respect is the example of the pharaohs. And for those who don't know what pharaohs are, they are the ancient Egyptian, what we would call kings or leaders. And they arranged for the burial of their bodies in pyramids. Pyramids, got it. So within those pyramids, they not only arranged for their body to be interred, but they also arranged for their servants to be interred, a boat to be interred there, their worldly belongings, jewelry, probably their wife too, at the same time, because they thought, you take it all with you. You go across the river of, I think they call it the river of Styx, S-T-Y-Z or something, R-X. And they would go across this river. Of course, we call that river the Viraj River. And they'd row your boat gently across the Viraj River. And they take everything with them. The Hades, something. And they weren't able to take everything with them because later on the grave robbers or the archaeologists, anthropologists went into those tombs and took everything. So obviously they did not take it with them. What they took with them was the karma that they had, the desires that they had, the subtle body that they had, but the material goods they couldn't take with them. So there's another example I use. Okay, here's another example. It's the example in Greek mythology of a person named Sisyphus. And in Greek mythology, this person is punished in hell. And this person has, I'm not saying it's a fact, this is just a story, but it illustrates the point. This person is given the punishment of rolling a stone up a hill. Really hard, big stone up a hill. He doesn't have a tractor or anything. So he's rolling a stone up the hill, the stone rolls down, he has to roll it up again, stone rolls down, roll it up again, stone rolls down, and this goes on for many eons. So this is our situation without Krishna consciousness. What do I mean? I'm not rolling a stone up the hill. Well, maybe I am. Why? Because I was born, had to go through so many years of education, trained up by my mother, spankings by my mother, learning things, heartbreaks, headaches, diseases, getting old. Of course, joining the Hare Krishna movement was the one good thing. And then, so let's say, forget about joining the Hare Krishna movement, but let's say, pause it, let's say, for example, if I didn't join the Hare Krishna movement, getting old, getting a family, retiring, playing golf, talking politics with my friends, dying, and then starting it over again. Pretty bad. You got to keep starting it over again. It's like one of those science fiction films I saw a number of years ago, where the person actually had to start his whole day over and over and over again. And it was kept repeating and repeating. Oh my God, it's kind of boring. So that's called chewing the chewed in the Bhagavatam. Punak punas charvita charvana. That we keep trying the same thing again and again and again. We keep endeavoring, not only trying, but we have to work hard, go to school, get an anxiety about our grades, and then start it over again. Next life. If we're lucky enough to take a human body. That's luck. So, what can we do? Well, if we take up Krishna consciousness, it's never lost. Whatever endeavor you've made, whatever chanting you've done, whatever person you've helped come to Krishna consciousness, whatever service you've done to a devotee, that's eternal. It goes into your spiritual bank account. And nobody can take it out. You can't take it out. It remains there, but you can enjoy it. And that's another benefit. Not only do you keep it, but you can use it. Can you imagine having money that you keep and you can keep spending it for happiness? Imagine I said, here's 20 happiness points. You can spend them to be happy. And if you spend them to be happy, the 20 happiness points remain. So you always have 20 happiness points. In fact, no, they're compounded with compound interest. So your 20 happiness points become compounded, 40, 80, 160. Of course, this is exponential. They become increased like this. That's Krishna consciousness. And it's nice. You know that next life you're going to be Krishna conscious some way or other. And there's Prabhupada hints here, and is later on described in more detail in the Gita, that if one is very Krishna conscious in this lifetime, you take birth in a family of transcendentalists. In other words, practically speaking, the first thing you hear even before you're born is Hare Krishna from inside your mother's womb. And then the first thing you take is prasadam, I guess, from the mother. But anyway, so then that's a pretty ecstatic. And then your family takes you, your little tiny baby, whatever your name is, to see the deities. And then you're circumambulating Tulsi and just feeling great ecstasy even as a baby. Pretty good. That's if you're very advanced. Of course, if you're absolutely advanced, pure, then you wake up in Krishna's pastimes. That's another story. But that's if one's 100%. So even like 80% is pretty good. Or even 10% is good. Because at 10%, then what happens is you take birth. Well, first of all, you go up to this heavenly planets, and you get to go to the, I guess, they're not the transcendental, but the heavenly discos they have there, or whatever. And after some time, you come down here and you're born in a rich family. And the idea of being born in rich families, you don't have to really endeavor for money so much, so you have time for self-realization. I mean, many people are born in situations where they don't really have time to be Krishna conscious. I mean, everything is just like hand to mouth, just every day, just like trying to get enough food to survive. And so that's a very unfortunate circumstance. But if you take up Krishna consciousness any little bit, swapamapyasha dharmasha trayate mahatobaya, it saves one from the most dangerous type of fear. And in addition, as Prabhupada said, the most dangerous type of fear is losing the human form of life. So you do not have to take birth as a dog or a monkey or a cockroach anymore. It's guaranteed. I mean, sometimes there's one exception where you really, like Bart Maharaj, he was meditating on a deer, and he took birth as a deer, but that deer was Krishna conscious. It wasn't an ordinary deer. That deer was visiting the ashrams of sages and didn't interact with the other deer. And eventually he took a human birth, went back to home, back to God. And so in other words, you don't lose Krishna consciousness. Very important verse, this last verse, text 40. Remember this verse. It's an important verse to study. That there, in this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution. In every other endeavor other than spiritual life, there is loss and there is diminution. Okay? Next text, text 41. And this text deals with how one can make rapid spiritual advancement by focusing your minds. So, Vyavasayatmika buddhi rekeha kuranantana bahu shakatyanantascha buddhyo vyavasayanam. Vyavasaya atmaka, resolute in Krishna consciousness, buddhi, intelligence, eka, only one, iha, in this world, kuru nandana, O beloved child of the Kurus, bahu shakaha, having various branches, he indeed, ananta, unlimited, cha, also, buddhayaha, intelligence, of yavasayanam, of those who are not in Krishna consciousness. Translation, those who are on this path are resolute in purpose and their aim is one, O beloved child, the Kurus. The intelligence of those who are irresolute is many branched. In other words, being very focused. Now the intelligence is, as Prabhupada said one time, the form direction of the super soul. So the intelligence basically means your long-term plans. I mean really long-term plans. You know, what are your values in life? What is your purpose in life? Think about it. You know, what is my purpose in life? Actually, one way to find out someone's purpose in life is to keep asking them the why question. If someone says, well, my purpose in life is to become famous. Okay. That's not really a purpose. I would ask them why. And then they would say it becomes famous because people will like me. But why do you want people to like you? Because it makes you feel good. But why do you want to feel good? Well, because happiness is my goal. And then, all right, so happiness is your goal. That's really what you want. That's your why there. And so then you say, how can you become happy? Will you become happy simply with people worshiping you? I mean, look at all the movie stars and rock and roll stars. How many of them take drugs, depressed, commit suicide, like that? And then look at the spiritualists and see how happy they are. Always happy. I mean, I could say that since I joined the Krishna consciousness movement, I'm always happy. I mean, not the level of Srila Prabhupada, obviously, but it's just like, it's nice. It's just like, wow. Like Prabhupada said, Krishna consciousness is like a system of recreation or vacation. You know, one time, or several times, people asked Srila Prabhupada, don't the devotees have a vacation from Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada said, no, practically Krishna consciousness is recreation. It's a system of recreation. You know, we don't have to, you know, we can have some sports and recreation. Like I mentioned, I go swimming. That's fun. But the point is, we don't need something else for our minds. You know, it's so blissful. Chanting Krishna's names, you know, why do I get up early in the morning? Because it's blissful. It's just ecstatic. I see Krishna, I dance. Even if there's no one else in Mangalarti, which happens some mornings, it's nice. Not nice that no one else is there, but it's nice, I'm happy. Because we're connecting with Krishna. We're giving our heart to Krishna. We're giving our heart to Prabhupada. And it's love. You know, people talk about love, loving exchange. All you need is love. So, anyway, someone who is actually making rapid advancement in Krishna consciousness is really focused. like you see, Srila Prabhupada was focused on the instructions of his spiritual master. And because he was focused on the instruction of his spiritual master, he was able to do miracles. And he was always happy. Purport. A strong faith that by Krishna consciousness one will be elevated to the highest perfection of life is called Vyavasayatmika intelligence. The Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 22nd chapter, text 62 states, Shara Sabde Vishvasatahe Sudrida Nisjaya Krishna Bhakti Kaile Sara Karma Kritahoye. Faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. And actually, let me give a direct translation of that Bengali verse. That Shraddha means, translated as faith, but it means a little bit more than that. Shraddha means to give one's heart. In other words, heart giving. It means one is fixed, one is in love, all that other stuff. Shabde, faith or heart giving is known by one's determination, fixed determination, that simply by serving Krishna, sarva, all karma activities, kritahoy, are accomplished. In other words, everything is accomplished. Everything you need is accomplished. I mean, of course, you do have to make a living, you have to do practical things in this world, but the whole focus or the reason for doing all those things should be to please Krishna. And when you're doing that, that's faith, that's firm faith, and then by having that firm faith, everything's revealed to you. Was that Yasha Devi Parabhaktir Yatata Devi Yata Devi Parabhaktir Tashaita Katata Yarta Prakashante Mahatmana. If one has that faith, then everything gets revealed. Faith in Krishna, spiritual master, and Vedic literatures. So faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. There's another definition. Trust. Trust, giving one's heart. When one is engaged in the duties of Krishna consciousness, he need not act in relationship to the material world with obligations to family traditions, humanity, or nationality. That's very heavy. I mean, he should help his family. Well, here we're talking about family traditions. We all have family traditions. Like in America, one of our family traditions, we all sit together on Thanksgiving and carve a poor bird up and put stuff in its stomach and rip its wings off or its arms or legs or whatever. Birds don't have arms. Whip its legs off. And so that's a tradition. Why do you have to follow such a stupid tradition like that? Doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, you have all these different traditions, and everywhere, India, every country, you have traditions that have no basis in the absolute truth. I mean, sometimes you can do them just to pacify people because they're going to give you a hard time if you don't do the traditions, but not so much that you just go crazy doing all these traditions and you lose your Krishna consciousness. What's the use? Okay. Obligation of family traditions, humanity, nationality. These are all limited perspectives, even humanity, if you're humanitarian. Because we're meant to see all living entities, not just human beings, but all living entities as our brothers and sisters connected to Krishna. So even humanistic activities are quite limited and self-centered. And what does become nationality? I'm an American, I'm a German, Aktu Labor, or whatever, or I'm from Mexico, soy mexicano, anyway, we're not. We're actually part of Krishna's family, the big family. I remember when I was young, I would go through Walt Disney World or whatever, and there was this nice doll exhibit, little tiny dolls, and they were singing something called of different nationalities, dressed in different ways, different cultures. They were singing "It's a Small World, We're All Together," basically. And I was thinking, how could it accomplish that? Certainly the United Nations is not accomplishing that, but Krishna consciousness is the United Nations of the spiritual world, where you see everybody as part of the same family. So, fruit of activities are the engagements of one's reactions from past good or bad deeds. When one is awake in Krishna consciousness, he need no longer endeavor for good results in his activities. When one is situated in Krishna consciousness, all activities are on the absolute plane, for they are no longer subject to dualities like good or bad. In other words, relative good, relative bad. They're absolutely good. The highest perfection of Krishna consciousness is renunciation of the material conception of life. This state is automatically achieved by progressive Krishna consciousness. I have to unpack that one. That renunciation is sort of like a disinterest. The word in Sanskrit is nirapeksha. Not that you're repulsed by something. You think, oh, it's horrible. But you're just like neutral. Huh. Like sometimes people say, oh, would you like to go to the movies? Why? I don't say, it's horrible. I just say, why? You know, why would I do that? Or when I go to Australia, which I hope to go to someday again, people say, would you like to climb on the Harbour Bridge? This is a very big tourist attraction. There's a big Harbour Bridge in Australia. You can see the Opera House and everything like that. And you have to spend a lot of money to climb on it. I said, why? What do I mean? You want to see Big Ben when you go to the UK? What's that? I've seen so many clocks, actually. I have a watch. Why do I need to see Big Ben? So, in other words, because one is so happy serving Krishna, having a higher taste, there's no question of being interested. It's an automatic disinterest in other things. Just like a little kid, when he's enjoying playing with his friends, he's automatically disinterested in coming home to eat. Although his mother keeps cajoling him, come home to eat, come home to eat. And he just doesn't even hear her. So we don't even hear the material energy when we're absorbed in Krishna. This is Krishna consciousness. It's automatically achieved, Prabhupada said. The resolute purpose of a person in Krishna consciousness is based on knowledge. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. In other words, knowledge of who Krishna is, knowledge of the soul, knowledge of the material world, knowledge of time, knowledge of karma, all these other factors, knowledge of the spiritual world. This is called, in Sanskrit, Sambandha Gyan. That's knowledge. So, that, our purpose is based on knowledge, because that's intelligence, that's Buddha Yoga. That I know what is the best thing. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. A person in Krishna consciousness is the rare good soul, knows perfectly well that Vasudeva Krishna is the root of all manifested causes. As by watering the root of the tree, one automatically distributes water to the leaves and branches, so by acting in Krishna consciousness, one can render the highest service to everyone, namely self, family, society, country, humanity, etc. If Krishna is satisfied by one's actions, then everyone will be satisfied. So in other words, by my being Krishna conscious, or trying to be Krishna conscious, I'm helping my family in the best way. I mean, my father passed away a number of years ago. But, so he's gone on to a much better place because of me. And actually, right before he passed away, he said, I attribute all my material success to your being a devotee, referring to me. Pretty good. So, I benefited him eternally. Not just pleased them for one day, or pleased my mother, as I mentioned before, by becoming a doctor. I benefited them forever. I've done the best service for them. Because Krishna will take care of them. Wow. I mean, if you can do that for your parents, you have actually loved your parents. So service in Krishna consciousness is, however, best practiced under the able guidance of a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Krishna, who knows the nature of the student, there it is again, and who can guide him to act in Krishna consciousness. We were talking about this morning. There's the psycho-physical nature, and we have different natures. I mean, there's basic natures, which are described under Varnashram, like someone is a Brahmin, intellectual, teacher, someone is a Kshatriya, like politician. Believe me, the politicians we have in America are not Kshatriyas. They are Malechas, Yavanas, Rakshasas, other things. But anyway, one is a Krishna conscious politician or soldier or something like that. Then you have a Vaishya, one who likes to Krishi Gorakshravani Jan. Vaishya Karma Swabhava Jan, one who likes to take care of cows, agriculture, and also engages in some sort of trade. And then finally, Shudra, someone who likes to work with his hands. There's nothing wrong with that. Artistic things, working with your hands, great, fantastic. So we each have these different propensities and abilities. So the spiritual master helps point us in the right, in the right direction of utilizing our abilities in Krishna consciousness. Because we all have bodies that are influenced by different modes of nature. The mind and the consciousness can be absorbed in Krishna, but the body is expert in doing different things. I mean, for example, some people can dance nicely and they can dance for Krishna. But if you ask me to dance for Krishna, like some of our devotees know how to Bharatanatyam, it would be a disaster. As they say, someone has two left feet. I'm sure you've heard that expression before. So that's not my skill set. That's basically it. Varnashram means, what is your skill set? What can you focus your mind on? And so the spiritual master does that. The bona fide representative of Krishna says, all right, here's what you should be doing right now, and maybe in 5 years from now something different. But guides us, and we have this faith. As such, to be well versed in Krishna consciousness, one has to act firmly and obey the representative of Krishna, and one should accept the instruction of bona fide spiritual master as one's mission in life. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur instructs us in his famous prayers for the spiritual master, Yasha Prasada Bhagavad Prasado, Yasha Prasada Nagati Katopi, Dayan Stuvam Tasha Yashastri Sandhyam Vande Guru Sri Charanada Vindam. We chant this every morning. And so Prabhupada is a perfect example of that. Prabhupada gave the example that when he took up his spiritual master's mission, Krishna provided him with a better family than he had before. When he took up his spiritual master's mission, he had thousands and thousands of sons and daughters who would obey him at the beck and call, and who loved him. And anyway, so Krishna does that. He gives you everything. Prabhupada said, Prabhupada said, quoting his father, Krishna has 10 arms. This is like a metaphorical, or let's see, it's not metaphorical. It's more sort of like a poetic expression. That Krishna has 10 arms, and with these 10 arms, if he wants to take away everything from you, you'll lose everything. And if he wants to give you everything with 10 arms, you won't be able to keep from getting those things. So this is very important. By satisfaction of the spiritual master, the Supreme Personality of God is satisfied. By not satisfying the spiritual master, there's no chance of being promoted to the plane of Krishna consciousness. I should therefore meditate and pray for his mercy 3 times a day and offer my respectful obeisances unto him, my spiritual master. Of course, I do that a lot more than 3 times a day with Prabhupada. So the whole process, however, depends on perfect knowledge of the soul beyond the conception of the body, not theoretically, but practically. In other words, one doesn't simply understand theoretical knowledge, but practices it. When there is no longer a chance for sense gratification manifested in fruitive activities meets karmic activities, one who is not firmly fixed in mind is diverted by various types of fruitive acts. So we have to see, is our mind diverted? Are we one-pointed? That's the purpose of this verse. And text 42 to 43 will go on. Yam imam pushpitam bhaksham pravadanja vipashtataha vedavadarata parta nanyadastiti vadanaha kamatmana swargapara janma karma palapradham kriya vishesha bahudham bhogeshvarya gatim prati. Yamimam, all these, pushpitam, flowery, vacham, words. Prabhadanti say, Abhipashyataha, men with a poor fund of knowledge, Veda, Vado, Rata, supposed followers of the Vedas, Partho, son of Prita, Na, never, Anyat, anything else, Asti, there is, Iti, thus, Vadanaha, the advocates, Kama, Atmanaha, desirous of sense gratification, Swargapara, aiming to achieve heavenly planets, Janma, Karma, Phala, resulting in good birth and other fruitive reactions, Kriya Vishesha, pompous ceremonies, Bahulam, various, Bhoga, and sense enjoyment, Aishvarya, and opulence, Gatim, progress, Prati, towards. Translation: men of small knowledge are very much attracted to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there's nothing more than this. Of course, when we're talking about the Vedas, we're talking about many, many different volumes, some of which are applicable to certain types of people, and some of which are applicable to other types of people. So there's people at different stages of spiritual progress. In a very low stage, you got people who really want to go to a better place in the next birth and have power and heavenly environment, go to Hawaii or something like that. And so they do sacrifices in certain parts of the Vedas. These are the flowery words of the Vedas. May perform sacrifices, may do different mantras, or whatever. And that's good, because at least they're accepting a higher authority, a higher way of doing it. They're not thinking that simply, I will be successful by my own endeavor, I'm a self-made man. They understand that there is a process given by God, that is Krishna. And they may not know Krishna's name, they may just think of him as the Supreme, or they may think of him as Om, like that. But they accept a higher authority by accepting the Vedas. So that's a step in the right direction. The step in the right direction. Let me just see something. Oh, someone has to leave early. Okay, so there's a step in the right direction, and that's good. Because a journey, even the longest journey, begins with a single step. But these are people with a very small knowledge. But they have knowledge, but it's small. At least they have something. And Prabhupada explains that people, and they think that that's what the Vedas are about, because they haven't accepted a bona fide guide. People in general are not very intelligent. And due to their ignorance, they most attached to fruitive activities recommended in the karma kanda portions of the Vedas. They do not want anything more than sense gratificatory proposals for enjoying life in heaven, where wine and women are available and material opulence is very common. Now, let me explain. The wine is not like Manischewitz wine. It's not like the wine you get here. It's called Somaras. It's a heavenly intoxicant, and it's completely different than the liquor you take here. And material opulence, and women and men, handsome men, and material opulence is very common. In the Vedas, many sacrifices are recommended for elevation to heavenly planets, especially Jyotishtoma sacrifices. In fact, it is stated that anyone desiring elevation to heavenly planets must perform these sacrifices, and men and women with a poor fund of knowledge think that this is the whole purpose of Vedic wisdom. It is very difficult for such inexperienced persons to be situated in the determined action of Krishna consciousness. So they don't know the Vedas as a whole. They just take a portion of the Vedas. Now that's a problem with any literature, that if you just take one part of the literature out of context, you will understand the whole literature. The example Prabhupada gave is like if different blind men touch an elephant, they will think an elephant is either like a trunk or a tree or a snake or something like that. So you have to see the totality. And so Krishna says in the 15th chapter of the Vedas, by all the Bhagavad Gita, by all the Vedas I am to be known. As fools are attached to the flowers of poisonous trees without knowing the results of such attractions, unenlightened men are similarly attracted by such heavenly opulence and sense enjoyment thereof. It appears very attractive. I say you can go to Hawaii and enjoy life. It's heavenly. You say, wow, better than in North Carolina. Of course, nothing's better than North Carolina, but that's another subject matter. In the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, it is said, Apana samam amrita abhuma, and akshayam avai shatamasya jajana sukatam bhavati. In other words, those who perform the 4-month penances become eligible to drink the somaras. That's the wine I mentioned before in the heavenly planets. Beverages to become immortal and happy forever. Forever means long time. It's not really forever, forever, forever. But it's a long time. You know, when you talk thousands of years or millions of years, that's a long time. Even on this earth, some are very eager to have somaras to become strong and fit to enjoy sense gratification. Such persons have no faith in liberation from material bondage, and they are very much attached to the pompous ceremonies of Vedic sacrifices. They are generally sensual, and they do not want anything other than the heavenly pleasures of life. It is understood that there are gardens called Nandana Kanana, in which there is good opportunity for association with angelic, beautiful women, and for women, the association with muscular, handsome men, and having a profuse supply of Samaras wine. You can see this in the movies sometimes. Some guy is sitting on a couch and some beautiful girls are feeding him grapes or something. It gets dry after a while, I tell you. It's not happiness. It's just, you know, you see things in the movies or you have this picture in your mind, but it's really boring. What really satisfies the self, the Atma Suprasidate, Savai Pumsam Paranama, is just loving relationships, unlimited loving relationships. Not just like trying to eat or grapes or, you know, beautiful people. Such bodily happiness is certainly sensual. Therefore, those who are purely attached to such material, temporary happiness as lords of the material world. So text 44, and that's the last text we'll read tonight. This is also an important text. Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam daya pratachetasam vyapasayatmika buddhi samadhau navatiyate. Bhagavad, to material enjoyment, Aishvarya, and opulence, prasaktanam. For those who are attached, prasaktanam means very attached. You know, when you have the PRA in front of it. Tayab is such things. Apadhit chetasam, they bewildered in mind, vyavasayatmaka buddhi, fixed in determination, buddhi, devotional service to the Lord, samadhau, in the controlled mind, like samadhi. Not, never, vidhiyate, does take place. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment of material opulence and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So one method that Prabhupada used to preach to people in India in the beginning days was to take his Western disciples with him, and his Western disciples Prabhupada would sometimes call his dancing white elephants, and describe how his Western disciples gave up material opulence to join the Krishna consciousness movement and to serve Prabhupada, and now they're happy. I mean, for example, before I joined the Krishna consciousness movement, we had airplanes, and I'm not just talking about a toy airplane, you know, real airplanes you can drive. Airplanes and boats and vacations and Bahamas and trips to Europe and all that other nice stuff. And that was attractive to people, you know, and probably would tell people, hey, this devotee really had material opulence. He had all these things, and people go, wow. And Prabhupada said, and he gave it all to serve Krishna. And people say, wow, that must be something really good. Just like that story of Sanatana Goswami and the touchstone. Once upon a time, there was a man worshipping Lord Shiva, and he heard that there was a touchstone somewhere, and he asked Lord Shiva, where is the touchstone? Touchstone is something that can turn anything to gold, like the Midas touch. So he asked, and Lord Shiva said, you go to Sanatana Goswami in Vrindavan, and he has a touchstone. So this man went to Vrindavan, and he said to Sanatana Goswami, can I have your touchstone or see your touchstone? Sanatana Goswami said, look, it's in there in the garbage. Go, you'll get it. So he picks it up, and he goes, wow. And he starts turning everything to gold. His wife to gold, his children to gold. You know, I'm adding a little bit to this. Everything to gold. And he's thinking, this is great. But then he has this realization that, why was this in the garbage? So he goes back to Sanatana Goswami and says to Sanatana Goswami, why were you keeping it in the garbage? You must have something better. Sanatana Goswami says, yes. And the man says, can you tell me what's better than this touchstone turned to gold? Turn everything to gold. Sanatana Goswami says, well, first you got to take the touchstone and throw it in the river. And the man says, oh my God. And so he starts to really have this like traumatic breakdown because the thing he's wanted his whole life he has in his hands. And now it's like this conflict in his mind. You know, approach, avoidance. I throw it in, I get something better. How can I throw it in? And so finally, you know, he grits his teeth and he throws it in the river. And he goes to Sanatana Goswami and said, okay, threw in the river. What's better? And Sanatana Goswami said, repeat after me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So, here, Prabhupada's short purport. Samadhi means fixed mind. The Vedic dictionary, Dinirukti, says, Samya Gati Yate Smin Atma Tatma Yatatmyam. When the mind is fixed for understanding the self, it is said to be in Samadhi. Samadhi is never possible for a person interested in material sense enjoyments and bewildered by such temporary things. They are more or less condemned by the process of the material energy. So, in other words, don't worry. Don't worry, be happy. Get attracted to Krishna and automatically these lower tastes go away. You don't have to worry about getting rid of material things. They'll naturally go away. Just like when a snake grows up, it sheds its skin. I hate to use that example since I just saw a snake today. But that's really what happens. You know, you're just like looking. Just like when I was young, I was very attached to playing with blocks and doing all sorts of like cute little things that little boys do. And now I'm not going to play with blocks now because you know I'm enjoying life doing what I'm doing at my particular stage of life and my particular stage of spiritual advancement. All right, so tomorrow we will go on to text 45. And now we're going to take questions. Let me take you all off of the mute process so you're not muted anymore. It takes 1 second. And now, whoops, you will be allowed to speak. So who has questions? Does anyone have questions?
Gurudev,
Oh, it sounds like Praneshwara. Yeah.
yes. So Gurudev, my question is like the children's current generation, they are very much addicted for the games and they play a lot of games and they are like they are not ready to listen anything.
Yeah.
So the generation that I have in 1990s, but the generation that we have in 2020, they are completely different and they are very
Yes.
much addicted to play games and as per the current investment in the games, many startup they are putting billions of dollar, billions of money rupees for the game to make them the gambling. So how they are going to become the Krishna conscious? And
So
this is
that
one of the principles, not to
I
play
understand.
gambling.
Well, you're talking about they're gambling for money or they're gambling just like playing video games? Be clear.
Because in the future, after 5 to 10 years, the people is going to be play gambling through games.
Yes. Yeah, they're doing that already. So I think I don't worry about it too much. We have to be so loving and compassionate and Krishna conscious ourselves that people will naturally gravitate to what we're doing and to us. I mean, because people want human relationships. People want to relate to others. I mean, that's why, I mean, for example, right now, that's why we're doing this thing on Zoom, because people like to see each other. Not only, of course, you probably don't like to see me, but you probably like to see each other. You probably look at each other more than you look at me while I'm giving class. And you're probably eating and doing all sorts of things while I'm giving, you know. One of the interesting things I've experienced when I'm using Zoom is I get to see people eating during class. I get to see people sleeping during class. I get to see people fighting with their wives during class. I mean, it's really entertaining. So, joking aside, joking aside, people want to relate with each other. I mean, it gets dry after a while just relating with a computer. I mean, yes, it involves the brain. You really get into it, and I've watched young people doing some of these video games, not the gamblings, and they just get so absorbed. I mean, there's stories about people dying when they actually go to these video game places and they just keep playing 24 hours and they forget to eat or sleep and somehow or other, even though they're young, they just die there in that spot. So I think we have to offer something nicer, and I'm not worried about trying to drag them away from their video games. If we are actually loving, I mean, like, there's a lot of things in this world I could get attracted to, and of course, I'm not attracted to video games. Boring. But because I have loving relationship with Prabhupada and the devotees, it's just like I'm satisfied. The whole reason people play these things is because they're not satisfied. The human relationships have gone down the tubes. What many people are experiencing now during the coronavirus time is that they have to be at home with their families and they're starting to meet their families. I mean, you see that previously both the man, the wife, and the kids, or the kids were actually not working but going to school. Then they have their soccer, then they have their soccer practice afterwards. Or of course you have cricket in India, which is something different. And so they never really got to know each other. And now, I've heard stories like, on the internet in person. He said, "Wow, I finally met my husband after all these years and having kids. I finally got to know who I was married to." I mean, it is kind of amazing because the modern culture, the way it's set up, the economics and everything like that, it really separates the families. And Prabhupada said, "Society, friendship, and love divinely bestowed upon man by God." So one's happiness is actually in relationships. And if we can give people these sorts of relationships, which Rupa Goswami talks about, then then they'll gladly renounce after some time their addictions. People are very addicted to all sorts of things. I mean, it's not just the video games. I mean, people are addicted to drugs. I was speaking to our contractor here, and I was asking him about one of his workers. I said, "He seems like a very nice person." He says, "Well, he's very addicted to drugs. He steals sometimes." I said, "But he's a very nice person because he's not given anything with a higher taste." So, in other words, we don't need to preach against video games. So what? Video games, gambling. We need to show people something that gives them more happiness, isn't it? That's
Yes.
all. Like what? How is Prabhupada? Prabhupada was like the Pied Piper. You know the Pied Piper. Some of you know who the Pied Piper is. He was a he was a guy who played a flute and took all the children away from, I think it was Hamlin or something like that. So he took all the children away because, I guess, because he played the flute nicely. Because and Krishna plays the flute nicely, and Prabhupada is his pure devotee. And there's a dog. Where are you? You're outside. Uh, anyway, so okay, so people need loving exchanges. I mean, even we see nowadays. I mean, oh yeah, another interesting thing I just saw. Talking about dogs, you just reminded me. Another interesting thing I just saw was that in the news that now people are rushing to the ASPCA. For those of you who don't know what the ASPCA is, you have it in every country, but it's called something different. The ASPCA is the American Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. In New Zealand, you have the New Zealand Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Australia, same thing. So So people are rushing there to adopt animals because now they're home and now they're not rushing to work anymore and they want to have someone to love. And I guess their husband and wife's not so lovable. So so the point is, I'm not criticizing them doing that. I understand perfectly well why they're doing that. Because what really satisfies the self is loving relationships. If you read my book, and this is not an advertisement, there's a chapter here. Put my glasses on. The chapter says, all you need is love, wherever that chapter is, towards the, here it is. And it says here, there was just one study. In a study done in Pennsylvania, the need for loving relationships is further illustrated. People who lived in this particular place, people lived in Nugaloka, I'm just making that up, but in this particular place, had a lower, very low mortality rate from heart attacks compared to neighboring towns, even though the normal risk factors were exactly the same. That means smoking, diet, pollution. The cause of this was traced to the fact that the majority of the residents of Nugaloka, no, it wasn't Nugaloka, were from the same town in Italy and had very close community and familial relationships. Listen to this. This all changed in the 1960s and 70s when the next generation became less cohesive, fragmented, and people were more isolated. In other words, the death rate went up. So that's really the point. The point is to have loving relationships, and the Krishna conscious society is meant for loving relationships with Krishna and with Krishna's devotees. That satisfies the self. Then these other things are just like inconsequential. I mean, I'm not interested. I was interested in so many things before I joined the movement. I was skiing, flying a plane. I mean, I did all these things that all of you think is like the greatest thing on earth. Vacations, wealth, everything. But what are they doing? My father offers me money to leave the Krishna consciousness movement. Of course, that offer's not open anymore because he's gone. But it's, I'm not interested. And before I was so interested. So I'm a case in point. It wasn't video games, it was something else. So, higher taste. That's the only solution. I mean, devotees have to be such warm, loving, let's see, Cupid dolls. No, anyway. So the devotees have to be such warm, loving persons, representative of Krishna, giving Krishna's love out to everyone. Then there'll be no problem. I'm not worried about the video games. We can hack them. All right. That's why we have you. You have a degree in IIT. You can hack video games and put Krishna there. Just subliminally have Krishna go right in the middle of their video game and say, "Chant Hare Krishna, you rascal." Okay, one more question from someone else. If we
Hare
have anyone.
Krishna Srila Gurudev.
Oh, that's Shruti, my most surrendered disciple.
No, no.
You have a question?
Yes. It's kind of, I guess, on a different topic. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, so I was wondering about how the Lord Chaitanya is it includes his like 5 characteristics, right? And that's his
Panchatattva, yeah.
Panchatattva, yeah. And so
Yeah.
I was wondering because they're called characteristics. I was wondering which each of the Panchatattva, which characteristic each one represents, or if that's
Well, yeah, Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself, and he's in the mood of Srimati Radharani. He's God. Then Lord Nityananda is Balaram. He's also God, but an expansion of Krishna. And he's the original spiritual master. Balaram, Lord Nityananda, the original spiritual master. Dvaitacharya is their devotee, and he's also an expansion of Vishnu Tattva. It's called the Vishnu Tattva expansion of God. So you have 3 Vishnu Tattva members of the Panchatattva. They're all individuals, but the 3 of them are individuals, but also the same, simultaneously, according to the Brahma Samhita. And then, after that, you have Gadadhar, who is an incarnation of Radharani in Chaitanya pastimes. So, actually, you gotta put yourself on mute. Let me put someone else on mute. Okay. So, then after that, you have Srivas, who is Narada Muni. So these are all distinct personalities, but the three Vishnu Tattva expansion personalities, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and Advaita Acharya, are all God, but different expansions of God. Of course, Krishna, Lord Chaitanya is not an expansion of God, he's the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hope that answers that question. Read the Chaitanya Charitamrita.
I was actually wondering if because if they represent like each one represents like a characteristic of bhakti that we can work on. Like if Lord Chaitanya is the full representation of bhakti,
They're
if
all
each
pure. They all represent pure bhakti.
okay, all
Pure bhakti.
right.
Pure
Okay. Thank
bhakti.
you.
And Lord Chaitanya is representing, not representing, he's presenting to
Yeah.
us pure bhakti in the mood of Srimati Radharani. And Lord Nityananda is presenting pure bhakti in the mood of Balaram, Sakyaras in general. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Srila Gurudev.
Complicated, but they are persons and they teach the same thing. But those who were followers of Lord Chaitanya generally in Madhurya Ras, and those who are followers of Lord Nityananda generally are in Sakya Ras, the friendship relationship with Krishna. So we have to end here because Mangalarti is coming up very soon. So one should live his life for Mangalarti, and everything else. Okay, we'll see everybody later. All glory is to His divine grace. Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai.